Alex, can you hear me? I can't.
Okay.
I
Oh,
can't.
we certainly don't have everybody here. James.
This is Jess.
James. He's in Florida. Oh.
Yeah.
Eugene. He's a Rotarian, that's why. Oh. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, just so James is the only one not here. Rest of us are here. The minutes. Have you had a chance to look at the minutes?
Good.
Okay. Was there a motion to approve them? I approved it.
We had a very long set of minutes that we started with, and then it got boiled down to very short one. There must be a story about that.
Yeah, the township wanted us to create uniformity with the other minutes for the other meetings, and so. What I'll do is send meeting notes to everybody, which will be kind of a much longer version, and then I'll send the minutes in this form,
For the official.
correct.
Is that why the version that was sent out had 5 pages? And by the way, thanks for numbering the pages. But it went to page 5 and then it stopped at page 2. So Anyway, that explains where the 3 pages went, right?
That's one interpretation.
Well, we have to abide by whatever the rules of the game are. Okay, so, all in favor, did I ask that already? All in favor? Aye.
Somebody, who seconded it?
Yeah.
I seconded, I thought,
And
unless
then-
somebody else wants to take the honors.
That's.
All in favor? Aye.
I'll abstain, I wasn't here.
Okay, I turn the meeting over to Alex because he's going to introduce our speaker from the Natural Lands Trust. I want to caution you, she's not going to take questions really, at the end because she has some other commitments. So, but you can make a few, I mean, let's make a few comments, but let's hold it somewhat close so that we can thank her for being willing to talk to us and hear what she has to say.
Thanks, Pat. Kate, are you able to hear us okay?
I can hear you, but I wasn't sure if you can hear me. Could you confirm that you can hear me?
Well, I guess I'm not.
Hi, Kate, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
We can't hear.
Yeah, she's muted or something.
Are you on mute?
I'm not.
a message, a text message.
Just show the volume.
Oh,
it's down.
What's that?
Check the volume on the TV.
Right, the table, there's a,
What's that?
up closer to me.
Just texted something. I'm not on mute.
No, I'm here. Okay,
We cannot hear.
I wonder if the audio settings. Bear with us. On the computer itself.
Can you hear us?
Yeah,
Can she hear us?
yes.
Maybe we could,
Yeah, she's nodding.
we could introduce ourselves so you know who we are.
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, let's start with you, sir.
So I'm Mitch Boyer, and I've lived in the community since '88. I've served on the planning commission, and I'm interested in finding what's best for our township.
I'm Patricia Owens, and I've been here a long time, but I finally have made it my permanent residence within this year. And I'm just interested in preserving the environment and keeping the wonderful township that we have.
I'm Brett Cartwright, old resident and interested in keeping the water in the township safe and the environment well organized.
Eric Tennisway, a local organic farmer. Moved here in 1989. Traveled for a couple decades and recently went back and purchased a 45-acre farm in Smithfield Township.
I'm Ken LaSure. I've been a part-time resident since 2007 and a full-time resident since 2010. 12, I think, something like that. Anyway, so I haven't been a resident of Smithfield in a terribly long time, but I'll just reiterate what my colleagues just said. I'm interested in keeping our beautiful green environment and keeping it that way and keeping our water safe. So that's why I'm here.
I'm Michael Albert, Township Supervisor. And Kate, I think we fixed it. Can you test, can you talk real quick?
Can you hear me now?
Didn't work.
So
Keep talking. Can you sing us a song?
I logged in on my other.
it says connecting to audio and the little things moving, so it's trying to connect, but it's not.
Did you all see the letter that we wrote to?
No, that was one of my questions.
Oh, we did write a
Did
letter.
you write it?
I did, and
And what did it say?
it said just what you asked me to say. Alex, can we get a copy of the letter we sent to the supervisors?
I guess it's certainly something we can talk about, but at this point, I'm mostly just focused on trying to get the audio working.
Which one is the meeting owl? Is it this guy?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just gonna unplug it, replug it back.
Okay.
Oh, and I lost everybody, did I?
No, you should be good.
I'm gonna go test on my computer.
All right. All right, Kate, try this one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Well, that's a big bummer.
Can we call her again?
No, she's in the meeting, so that. She can hear
Hey,
us,
you
it's
guys
just, for
can't-
some reason, we're not hearing the volume. Alex, I can't hear either, so it's not you, Kate, it's everybody.
Yeah, it's not. It has something to
Does
do
she
with the
wanna call
system.
into someone's speakerphone?
Yeah, maybe, I don't even know. I've never actually. So you guys can't hear me either, huh? This is bad.
Oh, I know, I can, hold on, one more thing, Zoom. Settings. Audio. I'm testing the speakers.
Any luck? You can't hear?
Boom, boom, okay, the meeting is. Right.
Welcome to Zoom.
I
Enter
can
your
hear someone
meeting ID
talking.
followed by pound.
Anything?
Is it working now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you on my end. Can you hear me?
Yes. So
Yeah,
I'm,
for some reason, unfortunately, for some reason, they are not able to hear us
This
in the
thing.
meeting.
Otherwise,
I think,
just pound.
keep moving.
Please enter the meeting password.
Probably some little switch that needs to be. But
Sorry about this, Kate, we will,
Are in the meeting now.
just a couple more minutes here.
More participants in the meeting.
Yeah,
Mic's
it seems
working,
like
the
there's
audio
some,
says it's working.
You cannot talk or listen until the host admits you to the meeting.
is there a switch that needs to be turned on?
It's, right now it's reading that it's going out the owl and coming in the owl, and I'm seeing it peak, so if we're just, for whatever reason, we're just not hearing it.
Yeah, the speaker's in the big TV. Is there something on the TV itself that could be switched?
No, it's not, it's going through the Zoom is going through these things.
Oh,
I said, we're not hearing you.
Yeah.
We're not-
I can hear her on the other line. There's something wrong.
could you switch the audio to the TV itself?
I don't know how to do that.
I
Yes,
mean, the only thing I can do is switch it to this laptop, but
yeah, we should just try that. It's better than, I just don't, I've never run into this issue. So unfortunately, we're at a technological loss at this point. I sense, I don't think this.
that's the TV. Talk, could someone try talking now? Oh, that's.
I heard something.
Output here. Now try. Kate, wanna try?
yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you on my,
Now try.
I can hear you on my speakers, but it's unfortunately not coming into the room.
You guys switch it on both. Audio.
I am, if you see the chat. Um,
And I hear you now through the laptop. Hi, Kate.
hi. I can try calling in. I called into the,
No, it's not that.
Do you have any
It's our
physical
system. We can hear you on the computer. It's the.
Physical speakers.
Can you turn yours off? 'Cause I'm gonna- Yeah, try now.
I didn't bring my speakers with me.
hello? Is the laptop
Try
speaker
now.
efficient? Hello?
There's gotta be a connection.
No. Try now.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Well, that's just the TV.
Yeah.
You there? Try again?
Testing, can you hear?
All right, that's good. We can hear you out of the TV, so that'll work. Alex, come back.
Okay.
Can you adjust the TV
Yeah.
volume? Really loud.
Here.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta come into the TV.
Okay, okay.
And the mics are still working, so it's just these speakers aren't.
Mike, would you please allow me to share my screen? I want to be respectful of your time. I know I only have 15 minutes. I have a presentation I'll pull up if I can share.
Of course. Do you know how to do that? Alex?
Yeah, you just right click on the participant and then, yeah.
Sit here.
Yeah, that might be better. It's kind of right in my ear.
Yeah, they host it. Yeah. All right, Kay, you're the host. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kane Rahman from Natural Lands. It's nice to hear all your introductions. I have been working for Natural Lands for a little over 5 years now. I work as a conservation project manager, and I also work on the planning team as well. So a little bit about Natural Lands. We have about 23,000 acres we care for. Our closest preserve to Smithfield Township is Bear Creek in Luzerne County. And we hold more than 400 conservation easements on another 25,000 acres of land. So that's 50,000 total. And we also work to flip a lot of land to the state for Bureau of Forestry or Game Commission. So tonight I'm going to take you through, here's some of our preserves again, the work that has been done on open space. Ann Hutchinson and I from Natural Lands started working with the township in maybe 2018, 2019. So I want to just quickly go through what we have for you material wise, and then talk about some next steps and get into the nitty gritty of land transactions and specifically conservation easements. So you completed the task of public consensus building. So back in April, to be specific, April 30th, 2019, an event was held in Smithfield called Places of the Heart. This is a meeting that Ann and I facilitated. We had conservationists, 3 conservationists speak about special features in Smithfield Township, and they were sort of the warm-up committee. They got everybody talking. Residents, I would say maybe like 35 to 50 residents were there. And they participated by marking their 3 favorite places on township maps. There was a lot of discussion going on. This event took place at the Shawnee Craft Brewery. So very well attended meeting. And this meeting helped us to collect public input regarding criteria for land acquisition. And you might be wondering, why do we need criteria for land acquisition? This is more photos of the event, by the way. So the next step is that you've completed is the conservation priorities and criteria. The criteria is needed because of the enabling legislation that allows you to have an open space referendum. So what we did back at the office is we took all of the maps that the residents marked up with their 3 favorite places, and we compiled them into one generalized map. We try to see where there's going to be clusters of dots, and we talk a little bit about where people put the dots at the meeting as a wrap up. So at the top left, you'll see the East Stroudsburg Water Company came up for a lot of people. Marshall Falls, that's kind of top middle. That's a waterfall on Marshall's Creek. On the eastern side, Shawnee Island, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but Depew Island. Depew? They're a little bit difficult to build on, so we had a little discussion at the meeting on whether or not they warrant protection because it's difficult to get there. And then some people pointed out some areas where they are fishing or they're accessing the Broadhead. So we were hearing a little bit about how people were getting to their favorite places as well. So as we looked at this, we then put this sort of bubble map together that shows generally the most important areas in the township to protect. This is critical because at Natural Lands, we say protect the best and zone the rest. You know, the townships aren't going to have the funds to protect everything. So prioritization is key. What is worth the township's, referendum money? What are the residents going to enjoy using? Is there a current need in the township? Do you need some recreation component that you're missing? So we turn those dots into this bubble map, and we use generally like pretty large bubbles to indicate these areas that residents are interested in protecting. We don't want to get too specific here because you want to be nimble about open space opportunities as they come up. We only work with willing landowners at Natural Lands. So when a landowner approaches the Environmental Advisory Council or the Open Space Review Board, you want to be able to quickly determine whether or not their project is going to move forward. So if you get too specific, you can kind of criteria yourself out of projects. So and that's part of why we do this exercise first, this exercise of what are people's favorite places. We think about the criteria in the context of the places you have available. So this is the criteria sheet that Smithfield's, at the time, Open Space Review Board pulled together based on the public input we received. So I helped them prioritize the different site components into 3 categories. Primary importance related to the water quality. And this really came from your referendum language. The referendum had already passed, and that the water quality was a key component of the language in the referendum. So we wanted to make sure that water quality and continuity were part of that. The secondary concerns were, is it under the threat of development? Does it contain some scenic view sheds or enhanced township gateways? And does it achieve the goals of other township planning documents? So your master plan and the Monroe County Plan for Clean Water. And then the third set of criteria were really just about feasibility. Can you afford this? Can the township afford it? Is the landowner willing to donate any value? Are you going to be able to apply for grants? Some projects are much more fundable than others. So that's where we kind of left the township. We provided some orientation, some materials, and we sort of wrapped up. Moving forward, the township, the first step is to secure a bond. I'm not sure, and this is something I asked Alex to ask your solicitor about. The referendum did pass quite some time ago, and I'm not sure at some point if you have to run another referendum, if there's like a timeout component there. But that's something I would ask your solicitor about. At any rate, you would want to hire bond counsel and secure a bond so that you can move forward with a potential conservation project. And next, I'm going to talk about the types of projects that are out there. So there's a few different ways you could do conservation in Smithfield. A fee simple is an outright purchase of land for township preserves. These types of projects have the greatest grant opportunities available, and the township would own that land, and it would be a public preserve or a public park that was open to everyone. A conservation easement permanently limits uses on privately held land. So somebody lives there and it cannot be developed more than they have agreed to in the easement, but that land is not necessarily open to the public. A land trust should hold the easement. There are some townships that hold easements, but monitoring easements is a big lift. Not all townships want to dedicate staff to monitoring. And there are fewer grant opportunities for easements in Pennsylvania. So there are less fundable projects. Trail easements allow the public onto private land. And trail easements are generally held by the township. Again, so they have to monitor, they have to make sure nobody has put a shed in the way of the trail. So I'm gonna get kind of deep into conservation easements for a couple minutes. I know we said not that many questions because you have a lot on your agenda tonight, but does anyone have a quick question before we get into this?
Hey, I would just respond to your question. We did find out that there is a time limit to enact the bond if the supervisors wish to do so, and it's 10 years after the referendum. So I believe it's November of 2026.
Oh, good. You still have some time then. So, all right. Well, thank you for getting back to me on that, Alex. So conservation easements. What are they? A conservation easement is a legal agreement between the landowner and a land trust or government agency that permanently limits the uses on the land in order to protect conservation values. So it allows you, this is normally, I talked to a landowner about this. It allows the landowner to continue to own and use their land, and they can pass it on to heirs or sell it. But the conservation easement will limit certain uses on a property. And but the land is still in the owner's control. So the process to do an easement takes about 9 to 20 months, and that mainly depends on the grant cycle, if there's grant funding that can be applied. So we start with a proposal. Sometimes landowners get the proposal and they may or may not just, walk away. Easements are expensive to do. They're generally around $50,000 in due diligence work, and that's not for everybody. We also do a draft conservation plan. I'm going to show you that in a minute, but it's basically a map with 3 protection areas that breaks the property up into the highest protection area, which is a very restricted area, standard, which is a slightly less restrictive. You can have some agriculture there, and then minimum protection area where you can have a home. There will be an associated summary of restrictions that aligns to those conservation areas, those protection areas. We will do an appraisal. At that point, the landowner determines if it's worth it to them. That's another point in the process that they could walk away. Maybe the easement is worth less than they thought, and they have to think about it for a bit. If they do want to move forward, we would apply to whatever grants might be applicable and do the due diligence work. This is kind of like any sale of land. A survey needs to be done. A phase 1 environmental review needs to be done. There's quite a bit of work involved. And then you close, and then from then on, every year, the easement would be monitored. In other words, someone from the land trust would come out and make sure that the easement is being abided by. And if there is a violation, there's a whole process to remedy the violation. So the protection areas. This is the map. This is an example. This is an easement in Chester County. There's some SPA on here, standard protection area. You can see some farm fields there. There's a bit of highest protection area. On this particular easement, we had what's called a floating MPA. So there isn't a house lot on here now, but they reserve the right to have a house lot on here in the future. There's also some portions of land that we excluded from the easement. There's perhaps a boundary issue going on with a neighbor. They would like to buy a little bit of land. We don't want to put that in the easement because we don't want to ever have to amend the easement. We want to avoid amending it. Generally, the highest protection area is the most important conservation area, and the permitted uses are very limited. So in here we have some examples: skiing, bird watching, and the only structures that can be built are related to the conservation purpose on the property. So there might be some fences, regulatory signs, bridges, and trails. Most existing improvements in the HPA can be maintained. Sometimes we say that once something needs to be repaired, you have to take it down. Maybe you have a billboard or something there. That's a conversation, negotiation a land trust would have with the landowner. The standard protection area is more of the working landscape. When we work with camps, this is where their recreation areas might be. This is where farm fields can be. And there are some improvements that are permitted here. Paved cartways can be in the SPA, and small improvements like run-in sheds, farm lanes, and a little bit of impervious coverage can all be in that standard protection area. And then your MPA is really where your buildings are going to go. This is where you can develop. It's usually on 2 to 3 acres. We try to give people about 3 because we don't want them to violate the easement by having structures in the SPA or the HPA. So we try to give people enough room that the easement doesn't feel cramped on their property. But residential improvements are allowed in the MPA, and other site improvements like septic tanks, for instance, are permitted in the MPA. So something that you might want to think about moving forward, you might wonder, like, how are we going to meet landowners who might have an easement on their land? We have in the past helped townships with landowner outreach events just to let landowners know that their property is a preservation priority. One of the reasons we do the bubble map and not the parcels is we don't want residents to get concerned that their property is a preservation priority. Again, we only want to work with willing landowners. So to have an event, have them come out and hear about conservation is a nice thing to do, and you can gauge the interest of the landowners. Then you can seek one-on-one meetings. It's usually nice to have someone who in the township who has preserved their land, who can speak to the process and their intention. That can be helpful to have one landowner talk to other landowners about the process. So if you have a landowner who's willing to move forward, I want to show kind of what an appraisal example would look like. So say you've got an interested landowner, they've moved forward with their proposal and they want to order an appraisal. They need to know that the easement is going to be worth less than the market value of their land. So before a conservation easement, perhaps their market value is 400,000, and then after the easement, it's reduced down to 300,000. So the value of the easement is the difference. Now, when they go to sell that land, they could still sell it for 300,000 because they've sold the development rights. So those funds could come to them in the future when they sell it, but you are diminishing the value of the property. So you might get some funding for using the property, but it is going to be less, considerably less in most cases, than the market value of the property. And then this is just a summary of some of the costs and potential grants that you could see. Some of the costs include the appraisal itself, title insurance, any land trust legal fees. We always have an attorney who works with us, review the documents. A survey needs to be done. The survey is usually the most expensive item, depending on the size of the property. It could be between $20,000 and $60,000. Phase 1 environmental assessment needs to be done. Land trust staff spend time working on the easement, and so there's costs there. There's usually a contribution to a stewardship fund as well. Land trusts, we are in the business of perpetuity, and perpetuity is expensive. So we need to guarantee that we have enough staff now and into the future to monitor the easement, so it means something. And then potential grant funds, which could be 40 to 50% of the value of the easement, depending on whether or not there's public access on the easement, etc., and how special the property is to the various grant programs out there. So then there's going to be net costs and due diligence costs, and then there's a net value to the landowner. Potential funders could be the municipality, the Township's Open Space Fund. The state DCNR provides up to 50% for fee simple purchases. They usually don't provide any funding for easements. And then there's bargain sales. So if a landowner has capital gains, they can donate all or a portion of an easement and use that to offset capital gains. We never discuss that with landowners. I just give them a packet and they can speak to their financial advisor or attorney about that. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope I'm not over time.
I have a question. Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Just a real quick question. You said that all the easements are always permanent. Is there such a thing as like 100-year easement or something like that?
I think that there's some government agencies that do that, but Natural Lands would never do that. It's very difficult to, as I said, the stewardship fund contribution, being in the business of perpetuity is expensive, and who's going to be you have to guarantee that you're going to be around 100 years from now to monitor that easement and have the potential to put it back in place.
But the ownership remains with the landowner.
Mm-hmm. They can sell the property if they want to, but the easement is forever. So the next landowner will have the easement on their property.
How long was Natural Lands working with Smithfield Township and what time period?
I think 2019 to maybe the end of 2020 was our last presentation. I believe your next item on the agenda is the minutes from the former Open Space Review Board. And I think my last orientation with them was maybe December of 2020, perhaps. I can check.
And what were the results that were achieved?
Pardon me?
We're going to hear from Alex about his experience on that.
I'm just interested if we bought anything or we had any easements or anything like that.
No.
I don't believe
And
so.
how much did the township have to pay?
For natural lands as assistance. Our work in your township was paid for by the William Penn Foundation. So I believe you only had a 20% match. So the majority of our work was subsidized.
So what was the total cost?
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't have that in front of me. I was told I was providing land transaction orientation today. But I can find that for you. We have a letter requesting the township's assistance, which we require.
I mean, order of magnitude, was it $100,000, $1 million?
Well, I think
20,000?
I think I can answer that question in more detail through, like, I can provide you that info. That's, you're more asking details that we know, and, you know, Kate's just giving us some orientation.
I have a quick one because I was working on a piece of property that was going to potentially be an outright sale. And the owner didn't get a value per acre that he was interested in, but was interested in a potential, conservation easement. Regarding the price, the value of the property itself, what would an easement usually look like for, highest level protection? In regards to the price of the value of the property itself, is there an easy way to understand what does the landowner get paid for that devaluation in their property once it goes, is that the $100,000 that she was saying?
I'll put it this way, say that the easement is, and it's broad, depending on the region that you're in. In in the Philadelphia area, we're seeing higher value per acre prices. But say it's somewhere between the easement is worth maybe 1/3 to 2/3 of the total value of the land. So the landowner gets that difference. And then when they sell the property, if they sell it with the easement, then they get the rest. So it's, and we think about this in easement design. Do you want a more restrictive easement so that you would have the easement would have more value? Or do you want a less restrictive easement? And then when you sell it, it has more residual development potential. The next person could potentially develop a little bit more. But then, yeah, it's a back and forth, how much is it worth it? And how much protection do the landowner, want on the property? It might be very important to you that very strong protections go into place, especially if it's a family property.
I assume, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of time, but I also believe if there's high protections placed on it that make it undevelopable, there can be tax benefits as well. Actually, I know for a fact that is true because the township, it provides a letter indicating that something is undevelopable. It has a little bit of a reduction in the property tax burden. Okay. I don't know if that's ever a selling point for you, Kate?
That it's less developable to begin with.
If it makes it less developable by protecting it, then there are opportunities to have a less tax burden on your property tax.
Right. I mean, there's an example I can give from another community I had recently worked in when they were establishing criteria. If a property was less developable to begin with, because say it had a huge riparian buffer, or they knew the soil wouldn't perk there, they thought that they'd rather put their money where the more developable properties are, because that property is less likely to be developed. In other words, you're only preventing maybe one house from being on that 10-acre property that is less developable to begin with. If you go after a 30, 40 acre property that could be 30 or 40 houses, that's sort of the township really putting the dollars to use because they're preventing more development. Now, I don't know if preventing development is something that speaks to you all as a group, and maybe you'd rather protect property that's more environmentally sensitive, or property with, for instance, the waterfall that provides a lot of an experience, a view shed. So that it just depends on what you think is worth it. But their property would be, I mean, I think you're talking about Act 319 as well, or just the fact that it has an easement on it that.
Yeah, I think maybe it's Act 319, and I was talking about it from the point of view of the property owner. So in this case, it's not necessarily a great action on the township, because if you're trying to get an easement on land that's already undevelopable, you might say, well, why are you bothering to do that? But there can be, we know of the cases here where that can be useful It's obviously not as valuable because you're not preventing any development. But to that landowner, it actually can be more useful because it gets them to have a formal document that says undevelopable, and then they can get, they have a lesser tax burden from the school property tax.
Well, if it was
Okay.
developable to begin with though as well, it wouldn't be as valuable as an easement property. You know, if it's the development potential and comps determine the value of the market value of the property as well as the value of the easement.
Right.
Okay, let's take one more. Anybody have any other issues or questions, and then we're gonna close?
You missed it, but, if, once an easement is in place, it's in there for perpetuity, I get it, it's a
Yeah.
tongue twister for me, right? So if a property is sold, the new owner can't suddenly change the use of the property.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to get that
Yeah.
clarified.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Alex? Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate your taking the time, and sorry about the technical difficulties in the beginning, but thank you very much.
Thank you and good luck. I'm just gonna leave the meeting here. I'm gonna assign it to you, Alex.
Can you give the host back to us?
Oh, yeah, that's. No, we're good. We're good.
Yeah, you're now the host.
Okay,
So
back to you.
Okay. You see where we are? You're up.
I'm up, yeah, well, just on that really quickly. 'cause
So I
I
can
could-
pull them up, Eric.
What's that?
I can pull those documents up.
Oh, the ones that I sent?
Yep.
Okay.
I sent them out to everybody, but for everybody's sake of
Okay.
having not too much paperwork.
Sure.
And also for limiting the amount of paper. Here they are here. I'm gonna put them up on the screen.
Mhm.
And I think this is a good one simply because it outlines some of the properties you guys were looking at.
Yeah,
Which is, what date is that one?
Sometime in 2020.
yeah,
November 9th, of 2020.
Okay.
I was, by the way, I used to be on this board. I'm very glad it's been reconstituted, but, I was one of the people involved in, selecting, my
And
name's
you are what?
Mary Ellen Higgins.
Mary Ellen Higgins?
Yes, so.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well, and like I said, I'm very glad that you're working again on this. Our committees, we were working with the Pocono Heritage Land Trust as our leader. Louise Troutman, who's the director, was working with us, but we sort of, our meetings fell off and we just never reconvened because Louise Troutman was very busy and we weren't sure which property we were going to try to buy and then one of the people who was on the committee passed away and we didn't have enough members to keep meeting, there were some absences, et cetera, so it fell away, or we just stopped convening. But like I say, it's good that you're
Well, thank you
working
for
on this
that.
again.
Thank you for that background. Thank you.
Yes.
Eric?
you said that you sent those out, or?
Yeah, they were sent to the PDF. I also have them up on the screen there too.
All right,
So
well,
that, it looks like after each meeting, more and more properties were sort of accumulated, and this seems to be the most comprehensive list.
yeah,
Prior to the committee sort of dissolving, speaking to.
Yeah. so the work that was being done and the work, I mean, I came in halfway through. A lot of these properties being discussed, so I didn't know them, didn't see most of them. But you can tell which ones they are, if you've been around long enough. The Swartz property up on the very top where it says A, Swartz, 214 acres near East Stroudsburg on Fawn Road. That was one of the target properties when I came on, because That property is off of Fawn Road and Brushy Mountain. And it is largely up against the creek and the reservoir. So I just know the process from what I dealt with when I was on the committees, and I was actually there when they came to survey the property, which was very difficult. I think that, you know, a lot of these properties, there's long history and lots of discussion that went into each one of them and why they were, you know, targeted in the first place. What you'll find, and I'm sure what we'll find as a group, is as you identify properties that would be valuable for conservation land, you're going to run into interesting landowners, lands that are owned by corporations out of state. Not necessarily people that you can actually get in touch with and talk to. So you might like the Eureka property. The Eureka property is along the Broadhead. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the paper mill as you're going over the Delaware River bridge into the Gap. And there's a large creek there with that Glen Park, right? The bike park that they have where they just put a baseball park in there, I believe. Baseball's in there a while, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, they just turned it into a dog park, actually.
Yeah, it was on the Pocono Record today. There's some controversy because it was turned into a dog park.
Yeah.
But you actually entered, I think, from Stroud Township, maybe?
Correct.
And then as you keep, there are paths along the Broadhead, along the creek.
Mhm.
And as you keep walking, you're entering Smithfield Township.
Yeah.
But what Eric's referring to is there was a lot of trouble getting a hold of the landowners because it was a corporation. And Robert Lovenheim was very frustrated because he would send letters and no one would reply and.
There's a lot that goes into it, and I realized that very quickly. And coming from the old group and now being part of the new group, I guess there was a lot to learn because it didn't go anywhere, and trying to fix those problems moving forward is going to take some work, and that will probably be by us creating some guidelines within the group, so we don't waste a lot of time and money. And understanding that, you know, we need to realize that we're just an advisory council, so we have no power. And I think that there's a lot of work to do there as well, where when we do identify a property, we decide, you know, okay, this is the property that we find is, you know, better than others because of what? Because of watershed, because of it's developable, you know, is it a developable property? Like Eureka, for instance, there was a lot of talk about Eureka, but at the end of the day, can you develop that property? Is it better to let Eureka hold on to it for the next 150 years and because they can't develop it anyway?
Yeah, it had these, like, they called it the Broadhead Canyon, the nickname for it is
Yeah.
Broadhead Canyon because they're the sides of, what would you call it?
It's just a valley, but I mean, they're very steep walls.
This is a whole quarry, right?
Well, the Eureka's on the other, Quarry's on the other side, but they own it all.
Okay.
And that property goes directly up over the hill, let's call it like Mark's bus station in Delaware Water Gap.
Yeah.
Up over the ridge and down back into the Broadhead Creek. And then towards the paper mill there. So are you envisioning that now? It's the big mountain in between us and Delaware Water Gap. Broadhead cuts through the whole thing. And when you're down there fishing, it's one of the best trout streams in the world, fly fishing wise. I think there's something called the 3 Bs, and one of those Bs is the Broadheads, and that strip of trout fishing that is world renowned is that strip.
This is above.
It's hard to get
Right.
to.
Yeah.
Above them.
Yep, above
And
Manuel,
above the paper mill too?
above Manuel and above the paper mill, straight into Walmart, essentially. Yeah, straight into the back way to Walmart. Largely inhabited by tent villages now.
Right, but that part's not Smithfield Homes.
No, but we do have quite a bit of that Eureka property, and it was discussed over and over and over again. And the discussion is just, well, we could buy it, of course, but does that help anybody in the long run? Because they've obviously not been able to do anything with it, they won't. So that kind of brings it lower on the totem pole, for. Developability and the fear that it is going to end up, condos. So as you go through the list of the properties, I mean, we can all sit down and talk later on about, each individual property and why it was identified, and I don't know all of them, so. Yeah,
But you might wanna, I think you're familiar with the Swartz. You might wanna give background about the Swartz one, because that, to me, that was a prime.
oh, absolutely.
That was
Yeah.
prime because it was near, as you said, it was near the reservoir,
Yeah.
so it would protect, it would protect the water quality in the reservoir.
Oh, yeah.
But, I think Gary, Swartz, had other ideas because we can only offer, well, it gets to the question of what we can offer people. Because I think we are limited as far as, because we are taxing, we're gonna tax residents. We're limited as far as we can only go by the fair market value of the property, whereas developers would offer more. If they had a plan to put in XYZ houses, and not this number of houses, they're gonna offer more.
Sure, what's it worth to you? Yeah,
Right.
what's it worth to the township? And this is a great conversation to have, because at the end of the day, what is a property that is full of old growth oak worth to the landowner? If he goes in and sells all that oak to a logging company, he's gonna get $500,000 minimum, okay? And then after he gets the $500,000, he's got that in his pocket, and then he can come back and say, okay, I'll sell it to you now. And because he's never gonna get the money that he believes that the land is worth. So this fair market value, that term, what does that mean, and how do you get to that, and how do you discuss that with the landowner when they know that the property would be sold tomorrow to a developer for $2 million? So you have to discuss that with the landowner. What do you think the property is worth today? They think it's worth 2 million. Okay.
Fair market says it's worth 150,000.
Yeah.
Probably you're gonna have that.
You're gonna have a tough time.
It's just.
So, go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, so,
Sorry.
I would rather
Thank
talk
you.
about the process and the land.
Right.
Because if we spent 2 years, roughly 2 years, and some undetermined amount of money at this point to do something, and it didn't succeed, was there any analysis done at the end of that time period to
Yeah,
determine
that's
what the root
that's
cause
that's
was that
exactly
it
what I'm
was
talking
not
about.
successful?
And that's why I was bringing this up, because the process, the failures are directly related to our ability to speak to a landowner about the fair market value of a property upfront. To sit down with someone and say, the going rate for an acre today is $4,000 an acre, and you're not gonna get $1 more than that. And then say, okay, how many acres do you have? You have 215 acres, okay? Well, we already know that you're gonna be coming in at less than $1 million. So are you comfortable with that? Because that's how that conversation needs to happen, because when they come back with an offer, when the offer comes back and everything's done. And it's under $1 million, and they said, whoa, I got $1.5 million offer last week on the property. So it's tough. It's a tough conversation to have with people. So you
Sounds
have
to
to
me
be
like the root cause was that we didn't have enough money to pay what was
Yeah.
required.
Can't pay more than fair market rate, that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you want it badly enough.
It's by law. There is a strategy in wealthy areas, they can do fundraising, like from private donors who
Yeah.
wanna say, if we had a very wealthy people in this township.
Yeah.
And we could say, okay, the township can only contribute fair market value. But then we've got this wealthy guy who wants, we're gonna have a fundraising campaign, anyone who wants to throw in money.
And that goes to 501c3 that matches it, and that way you can pay more.
I mean, we could try that, but that's done in some like Chester County, there's a lot of very wealthy people out there, and that's a suburb of Philadelphia that's very wealthy, and so they do things like that, but I'm not sure that would work here. We can certainly try.
Absolutely, and from my understanding as well, there are other outlets as far as like natural lands, or you can start working with other groups that have money to help get that landowner to a price or a valuation on their property that they're a little bit more comfortable with.
William Penn even,
Yeah, yeah,
William Penn does a lot of conservation money and
and
depending on what it's for, if they might be able to put in some extra money, it's certainly able to buy it.
and you can, and I believe that you can work with the landowner as well. And for instance, if you're gonna buy the property and you can tell them that they get life rights, so they'll live there, they'll live there for the rest of their life. And that property will remain theirs, and they are allowed to farm, live, not build any houses or anything, but they're able to stay there till they die. You can also go a step further and say, your daughter, if she lives there with you.
Or an easement,
Yeah, or an easement,
which is, you can sell it too.
yeah, or you can just
You can
sell,
sell an easement?
No, you can't sell the easement, but you can sell the property, you just, the easement stays deeded, it stays on the property.
correct,
Did you exclusively go for full out purchase, or did you ever
Yeah.
go route of easements?
full out.
We were hoping for full out. I mean, like, I think Swartz was one I really thought was the best and the obvious choice. But like I said, we had trouble. You know, Gary knew that there were other options for him and, so that didn't work. And so we were left with the other ones, which all are, for various reasons, were not, ideal. I mean, like, as Eric was saying, the Eureka one is not really developable, so whether we should waste our time on that is doubtful, like and they don't wanna talk to us either, so that's another reason. That's another thing is you'll discover that sometimes the landowners don't really wanna be bothered, they may have, they have this property, but I don't wanna sell it right now, so.
It strikes me that easements might be useful for trails. Something to pass, like if you own a property, but I don't really wanna sell a property, I didn't wanna subdivide and sell. But I wouldn't mind if a corner of my property does trail and public are using it.
Yeah.
Seems like it'd be a good use for that, I don't know how useful it is for sort of protecting an overall stream, but maybe if there's a stream area, but they still want it to be their property, but they're allowing anyone to use it.
Yeah, and I mean,
Another route.
the fear is that, Gary and his sister, sell all of it tomorrow. Because, and I know that that's a fear, because we know that Gary has wanted to do that for quite a long time, and I thought, deserved that this was something that he was very interested in, because he did not want to see it go to development. He is,
Which property is this?
the Fawn Road property, yeah,
Fawn.
it's 215 plus acres, but, there's another way to go around it and say, well, it can be subdivided. And Gary can keep a large portion of it and then sell a portion of it to conservation, or, there's just other ways to work around it, and the easements as well, and that wasn't brought up. But again, in any property, when you approach a landowner, you have to be prepared to not offer them as much as they can get from somebody else.
Okay, clearly this is a big complex issue.
Sure.
And clearly do we want to develop a process by which we review the available land? I mean, I need to hear you guys.
I would like, I'll just say what I said again and maybe a different way. I think we need to understand why the 2-year effort was unsuccessful. What the primary root causes were. And then address those root
Well, how
causes,
would
and
you
Well,
unless.
suggest
you were just sort of told that the EAC basically disbanded because someone died
Yeah.
on it and people weren't attending. That's probably the main. I mean,
And Louise Troutman, who is the director of the Pocono Heritage Land Trust, was very busy with other. She's got all kinds of properties she's looking at buying for the land trust, and she's got grants to manage, and she's very busy, and we were not. When you get an expert like that to give you their time, they want you to move forward with something, let's get something done here, and. We didn't have a willing landowner who, like, if Gary Swartz had been ready to, okay, I'll accept market value, then I think we would have moved ahead with that. but I think what Eric's stressing is sometimes it's more difficult, it's difficult, and, you're not always dealing with a owner, you don't always find landowners who want to sell their property.
What's interesting, what she also said, which is I think very important, is that it's like, you gotta go with big bubbles, because it sounds like it's pretty opportunistic too.
Yep.
It's like, this is the best property to conserve. But if the landowner is not interested in selling, then that's the landowner's right, they don't have to sell to you.
Yeah.
So you're out of luck.
You are.
So this is okay, and landowner's willing to sell, you know, do you do it because you can,
Just
and
to
maybe
keep it
that's,
moving, yeah.
maybe that's the.
Brett?
Can we, obviously, we can benefit by your experience with this last episode. Is there a way that you could give us the short story about what, based on your experience, the best way to approach this is and bypass all the pitfalls?
I think the best way to move forward as a group is to better understand fair market values. Okay, because that's what we need to be able to talk to these landowners about, is the amount of money that they are going to get close and, you know, on average per acre. Because then they're not going to be surprised. And then we have to understand what the process is. If the landowner is not satisfied with that number, how to increase that per acre purchase price through other avenues. Because in the Poconos right now, you will find that your home might be worth online 300 grand, but after a bidding war, you're gonna sell it for $450,000. That's,
I couldn't
you know, you're just gonna, you know, houses get involved in bidding wars right now. Market's hot, we are the Poconos, train's coming, watch out, you know, so. We just need to better understand what the, you know, estimations are for land value, price per acre. And
How
so-
would you suggest we go about?
Well, I think we should go back to what these, you know, how Gary's property, we got that number. I don't know, I wasn't part of that at all.
I think, as I recall, fair market value, I think you get 3 appraisals from different real estate professionals. And they will look at what properties have sold in the neighborhood.
That's how appraisals work.
Yeah, and that's how they determine, they each will come up with a figure and you get 3, I believe, and that's how you get fair market value.
So we could even easily, I'm sure that there's some type of public record for the Swartz property. I mean, it's gotta be, we paid for it.
How many properties are on this list?
I think there's 13, yeah, 12 or 13. Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about 2026, that's not a long
14.
time. I mean, I would, and if we feel some level of confidence that there was some level of community input into selecting these 12 options. In terms of thinking about timing, I would think going through, just getting a fair market, I mean, that might actually be too quickly, because if you know for a fact that there's no way of getting in touch with the landowner, or there's no way the landowner is gonna sell ever.
Yeah.
Then
You can write
skip
those
it,
off, yeah.
but if there's a conversation that's like, oh, I could be interested in that.
Yeah.
Then you get appraisal, which could be, you know, a few $1,000s to get an appraisal of the property. And then that, if you're saying that's the biggest problem you saw, that should be step number 1, because then that can be initial conversation with the landowner saying, this is the appraised value of the entire property. Is that anywhere in your ballpark? Like, it's nowhere even close. What about if it was half your property as an easement?
Yeah.
50% of that, would that be of interest? No,
And
then you move on.
absolutely, and in that process, from what she was saying. Let's say Gary's property is, let's just ballpark, let's say it was $1 million, it appraised at $1 million. Gary wanted 100 million and a half, fine. What's the process to get the other 500,000, or what's the counter offer for the easement? And to understand that, you know, as a group, so we don't have to spend a whole bunch of time and money on it, talk with them and say, what type of an easement, you know, what type of a payment would this, you know, owner get? Just, it doesn't have to always be the exact, you know,
Correct.
deal, but so that we're able to have better conversations with the landowners instead of wasting their time. I mean, that's That's what I saw as being a problem. Hey, you don't wanna sell it for $4 an acre? Well, we're gonna do an easement, and this is a payment that you could receive for this. And you keep it for the rest of your life and it goes to your child, or you sell it, it doesn't matter. Because, you know, what, I still don't understand what the price was comparatively to the value of the property. Like, what does Natural Lands pay the landowner for that, you know, lifetime?
Well, she's saying it's, I'm sorry, I know you got a question.
Yeah,
Just to
sorry.
answer that. She was saying the land that you're gonna ease
Yes,
will get assessed. So she was saying that's $100,000 assessment. But then making sure you understand to the landowner, when you sell this property, it's not gonna be worth a standard appraisal. You're gonna lose that value. So
absolutely.
they have to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, Pat, mention it.
What's explain a little bit better what the 2026 deadline is?
It has to do with the,
A bond would have to be in place to purchase it.
To get the 50% match, is that?
Because the referendum, there was a referendum that, the township paid for, or maybe it was Natural Lands that paid for it. Where they surveyed the township, the people in the township to find out, or no, it was voted on.
Yeah, referendum.
It was voted on. And 70% came back saying, yes, they favored purchasing open space for the township.
I think it's related to certain amount of tax dollars being able to.
Yeah, a certain amount of Smithfield Township tax dollars, and there's also something that had to do with the match. From what I remember,
probably
there was
means
like a
that there's-
deadline on that match.
It probably means, cause you get, if you got 100% grant money to buy it, the township doesn't need a referendum to do it. But I think the township probably needs a referendum in order to provide a certain significance.
So the township voted, yes, let's do this, is that right?
Well, not quite, the voters voted, yes, let's do this, the supervisors.
I remember voting for it, was a long time
The
ago.
supervisors have to then enact the bond and take do make the bond occur, which incurs some debt upon the residents of some level. I don't know what it is.
And that has never been done.
That has never been done. The supervisors never voted to formalize the vote by the residents. The supervisors have actually put it before them and actually take I think it's 2 million. And vote on doing that, which then,
They don't have to do that, but they have the ability to do that based on reference. And it's not.
it seems to me like we've got two different paths here. One, you just mentioned, which is the supervisors going ahead with this or are approving
Yeah,
this.
but they're not gonna go ahead with something if you don't have land to buy.
But you can't buy the land if you don't have the money.
But we have the money. We have the ability to have the money.
As soon as there was a property that where the owner seemed to want to have a deal go forward, you could, at that point, I suppose. I don't know when the best timing is, that's a good question.
I think basically the supervisors are allowed to go into debt on this issue because of that referendum, if the right.
But they only have 10 years to do it.
Well, we could put it back on the ballot again, but.
Is a bond the only mechanism that's allowable to do this funding? Is that-
no, there's, the other one is earned income tax. There's other mechanisms. The most common one in Monroe County that I know of is an EI, it's like an EIT, it's 0.25. So right now, this township's 1%, it would increase to 1.25, but that has to go before the voters. It's a formal voting process and they have to. We already have, you know, as residents, the voters have already approved that level of taxation for 2 million. It's, you know, it sounds like the supervisors want to see properties that they can actually, you know, acquire before they vote to do that, because let's say they did it next month, they voted to, let's go with the bond. Now, all of a sudden, you have that money, it's sitting there, it can only be used to acquire property, but what happens if nobody in 5 years comes and, you know, you can't use that money, then the voters are being taxed for money that's not being used, so does that sound kind of like the dilemma?
Brett,
Use it or lose it.
I'm curious, given a more strategic understanding of what our goal is, if we could come with a scope of work for like one project and develop and take it to the limit, at what point do we stop and say, we've tried this a certain amount of time has passed and resources have been allocated, when do we cut off and move on to the next thing, rather than just have a list of properties that never got any action? Well, is there a way to bring the scope of work into focus for this project? So we
I'm
can
gonna
actually
ask
make
you
progress?
all to put on your thinking caps and come up with what you think our next action ought to be. I mean, we have to have like a motion and.
I don't think you can do it at this meeting. I think you gotta have a workshop and you gotta sit down and dig into more details. But before you do that, apparently we hired Natural Lands who should be expert in everything that we don't know. And they didn't make this happen. And I wanna know why.
Well, they're not near, they're 2 hours away from us.
Yeah.
And their experts are, involved in all kinds of projects. But what we could do is get the Pocono Heritage Land Trust, try and get someone, Louise again, to come and help us decide what to do. I shouldn't say us because I don't need to join your board. You're already on the board. You're already, you're a good board. So. But you could ask Louise to get involved, because she's a professional. And she knows how to do, and they just hired Jennifer Shakaitis to also work at the Land Trust, so they have now 2 full-time employees. Where they only used to have Louise, so now she has extra manpower, so she might be able to.
Okay, Mitch, I'm not suggesting that we're gonna do it tonight, but we gotta decide what we're going to do next. And if I'm just asking someone to make a motion that what our next step ought to be, and if it's just a baby step, fine, and if that is to, I'm not even sure what it would be. And Eric, I count on you, and I think
think-
Mary Ellen has some good ideas.
I think reaching out to Louise would be great. I mean, she was, if she has a little bit of time to chat with us, I mean, it could be on a Zoom even for 15 minutes. If she's willing to, yeah.
Should we have her
Alex,
at our next meeting?
Does that seem?
Well, I mean, what we could do, instead of I don't know if you need a motion, it may be just the consensus that this will be a recurring agenda item for your next meeting, and then in the meantime, we can try, I already did actually have a conversation, I've had some conversations with PHLT. And Natural Lands was kind enough to offer our primer, but Natural Lands urged us, I hope that's saying it correctly, but to work with our local land trust, who's not 2 hours away, so they can help us do a lot of the stuff that, we've been discussing, try to get over that final proposal, put something before the board for them to potentially act on before the deadline runs out.
Well, that seems like a good solution, that we keep it open as a ongoing business.
Yeah.
And that we try to get whatever that title is, Pocono Land Trust.
Pocono Heritage Land Trust, yeah.
Yeah, to come to, we would count on you, Alex, to have a free conversation with them and then ask if they could come in and talk with us.
I can certainly give it my best, and, but I think yeah, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to request that Alex reaches out to Pocono Heritage Land Trust to come to the next meeting. To
Second.
discuss.
Second, is there a second? Any discussion?
I don't know if you wanna hear from non-board
And
members.
and the only thing I would say in discussion is if we go from 1 month to the next and to the next, we're gonna be in 2026 before we know it. And if you really wanna make something happen, you've got to put a different kind of effort into it.
Okay, I would like to propose that we,
Wait a minute, we've got a motion and a second. Are you gonna?
And we're discussing.
Yeah.
what do I do?
Well, do you
For
wanna,
the motion, well, you could.
You wanna-
I'd like to
amend the
propose a
motion?
motion that we move towards the Swartz property, which seems to be one of the prime targets, because it's such a pristine and that we move with potential of getting that property, focus what energy we have on that. Gary is, right now, he's available, his future is undetermined. And he is definitely on our side in terms of preserving what's there. So if there's a way we can focus on that one project, we might be able to make progress with that. If there's a way I can propose that, I'm sure.
There are two motions. Let's vote on the one about having the land trust come at the next
Let
meeting.
me just say something before you vote. So Pocono Heritage Land Trust indicated to me, since you're voting on it, that they didn't have an interest in working with Smithfield Township due to something that happened that I wasn't aware of or part of. So that's why I said I'd try my best. Now that they have Jennifer, I mean, I've spoken to her a little bit about trying to reignite that relationship, and it seemed potentially hopeful, but Louise has indicated that she has she doesn't, she's the executive director, so I mean. I'm not optimistic, to be perfectly transparent with you all, based on, because since I started, I've been trying to,
Yeah.
Well, my motion was to have you ask.
Mike,
yeah, I can definitely ask.
do you know the history?
No, I don't.
No, I don't either, but I do know that there was kind of a blow up. And
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of, the group kind of fell away after that. But it's like a personnel issue that probably is not good to discuss in front of a whole group of people. It's a personnel.
I really don't wanna spend time doing something until I understand why what we did in the past didn't work.
well, I
Because,
think we
you know,
heard,
the definition of insanity
Yeah.
is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
So you don't trust the answer you were given?
I don't think we know the full story. I would like to, talk to all the people that were involved, and it sounds like there was something with the Heritage Land Trust that is part of the root cause. It sounds like the monetary value
Yeah,
is part of it.
well, yeah, dealing with landowners and giving them a price for their property that was less than they wanted to get for it is always going to be an issue. But now hearing a little bit more about potentials for easements, understanding that if we really have our eyes on a property as a board, we could go out and try and search for more money for that landowner. I think that that's something that was not done. There was a lot of dead ends that maybe weren't, really explored. They were not explored, but they were let go because of maybe disappointment, maybe because, the people the township spends the money and then they get upset because it's not going anywhere and they feel like it's not the right group of people to get the job done. So understanding that things were not done and that there's another opportunity to do so, I think you're right. I think you're right. We need to push harder. And if we really want something, then we can't turn around in 2 years and say, oh, well, it didn't get done. Well, because it's relies on, a lot of legwork.
Mitch, I think one of the things about anything like this, from my experience at a lot of different areas, is that what happened in the past was a result of the people who were involved in it and the personalities and the environment of what was happening.
Sure.
So I don't think we're gonna learn anything from finding out somebody screwed up or somebody yelled at somebody else or whatever it is. So I would.
Has anybody here gone through a formalized root cause analysis process? Ever?
I've gone through.
Well, I have in my past.
I mean, you have to ask question after question after question. It has nothing to do with trusting the answers that
Not
you get.
at all.
Because somebody says, well, the car had a wreck because the tire fell off. You have to say, well, why did the tire fall off? Well, because the nuts weren't tightened.
Yeah.
And well, why weren't the nuts tightened? And you go through that until you really determine what the root cause of the problem was. And, if we just, go out there and try and do the same thing again.
Well, I
yes,
guess I'm just
people make
hearing-
it different.
I'm just hearing that it sounds like there's a lot of reasons why it didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a variety of.
There's a lot of reasons, and if you rarely can point to one reason why something doesn't work, especially something as complicated.
Well, one reason.
I mean, if you want to
has to-
spend 6 months trying to figure out why it didn't work 4 years ago, I will tell you immediately why it doesn't work this time.
Well, one reason it didn't work is
Very
because
good.
we paid National Lands to do something, and they were 2 hours away, and they didn't get a result. And so you say, okay, well, they were too far away and they weren't involved, but the local people don't wanna work with us because of some kind of blow up, so, you know, you kinda have to go through.
I'm
some
gonna
type of-
exercise the chair's responsibility and cut off the discussion at this point. We have two motions.
I'll make a new motion to table.
I second.
To table the whole thing, not to have the.
What? Doesn't sound like there's.
But I wanna support your motion, we just haven't got the vote on it.
Well, from what, it may not be the right time to talk to Louise, because from what he says, it sounds like maybe you need to be closer to getting a deal done, and then she might be willing, like if she said, if you could say, look, we've talked to Gary Schwartz and he's like, he's a lot closer than he was before.
Yeah.
Or something like
And
that.
we.
Okay, you withdrew your
I'm
motion.
withdrawing my motion.
Yeah, okay, now we have a motion on the floor that says we'll work with Gary Schwartz and try to put in place all the suggestions that Eric has made about fair market value, and we can learn from that experience.
We could, I don't know if I really understand what, I know your motion is, we should focus on this. Are you saying you wanna tell the supervisors that? Are you saying you wanna try to get more information?
True, yeah, there's a lot that goes in.
Well, that's a good question,
What is the
because
motion exactly?
I,
The motion would be to discover, to approach. To get our stuff together and make a formal proposal to Gary. And let everybody know, pardon me. All the powers in who would be a part of this motion know that we want to focus on one property, the source property. And just try to get that one thing done.
should we get the supervisor's agreement to do
I
that?
don't.
You don't need it.
I don't think we do.
No, you
This- The
don't.
whole thing is you just needed, someone just go and do a little legwork to see if.
It's about legwork, and it's about learning as we go, because
I don't know.
no one else
the
is
motion
gonna.
for that, is what I'm trying to say.
No one
Just
is.
go and talk to Gary.
Yeah,
Get some
I'll see
information.
him on Thursday.
Okay, perfect.
So
you're the point, you're gonna do it.
That's it. It's not a formal action of this committee. It's not requesting that the supervisors do anything. Just, that's why I'm motioning to table this until next meeting, when maybe some people will have more information. And I think the same thing for what you're saying, Mitch. You can discover who said what and who swore who much better off the
Off
formal
the record.
agenda.
Yeah, that's something for individuals to ask about.
Yeah.
It seems like
Have a
Gary
conversation
Allen.
with her after and get.
It's like Gary Allen could
You'll
tell
get
you.
closer to the room.
I can tell you the whole history, but it would be like, it would be a whole gossip session really
Yeah.
about people who.
And that can be,
Yeah.
that can be off, motion to table is motion, does anyone want to second that? Second.
All in favor? Okay, so
So that means it'll be on the agenda for next week, at least.
And
Manifest.
I'll talk to Gary and we can put that on there.
and I suggest that you will talk to Eric about
Yeah.
fair market value.
By the way, it's already
Strategy.
8:22.
Pat, do you wanna, do you want me to just, how do you wanna proceed with the rest of the meeting? Cause it seems to me that we won't get to everything, so I would,
Motion to table Smithfield Sewer Authority.
Well, let me just say, they uninvited us. And because of the insurance,
They just have never had visitors, and
Yeah.
my understanding is that it was a little bit taken, like, oh, visitors, what do we need to do? It's a industrial facility, you need hard hats, and they're doing their due diligence to try to make it possible. I think there will be a visit that will be possible, it's just not gonna be this month.
well, fine. Brett and I talked,
Well, I reached out to them, the Smithfield Sewer Authority, so. And they have a meeting the second Monday here at 1 P.M. I'll go there.
The question is, what is it? I mean,
I don't know.
I know a little bit from side conversations, it's like, what is this for? What is the purpose? You can't just go, we wanna have, I mean, and this is also just the way some people talk and write emails. But I think it was just, we've never done that, there's some liability issues, hold on. But if it's honestly, you just want a presentation on, but then you have to be specific on what you want it on, not just come and present, because they don't do that either. So what do you want a presentation? On? You want a presentation on how, I think the question is, the concern, correct me if I'm wrong, is about water quality. So I think the real question is, what happens to the shit when it comes into your facility and how do you treat it and what goes into the river? Can we just have an understanding of the federal, is that, am I right? That's what you're sort of looking at? So maybe there's a request, it's an amended request to say, we just wanna, we don't understand how sewage works, and we're curious because we're talking about water.
Would it be a good
Educational
idea for
field
us
trip,
to go
yeah.
to one meeting and
We're
kind of,
naive, we don't know nothing.
I don't know that, yeah, I'm new to shit, how does it, where's it go?
And I think that was serious, like, what is this about? Is this because we're, environmental. What's our title again? Environmental Advisory Council can sound scary to people that are dealing with this all the time,
Totally understand that.
right?
Yeah, they're probably
Like,
oh,
wait,
yeah.
we're being probed by an environmental council? I mean, no, seriously.
It was an educational thing, and I didn't understand how it came up, because I missed that, but I think that we all kind of agreed that it was just an educational field trip to
Yeah.
to better understand our water quality and how our municipal.
So again, I think you should table, but I think don't lose the hope in the next couple of months, something.
okay, and I would like, if Brett's willing, for Brett to go to a meeting and just show our presence and find out what's
No
happening.
agenda.
No, perfect.
And don't
Come with
get in the shit.
your nice face.
Yes.
Okay, we did that.
Motion table, oh, it's been discussed, all right.
Oh, the next one, Pat, I just wanted, this is information very quick. This is a phenomenal document.
It's wonderful.
Yes, so you all have this now. I respectfully request that you all, this is just information only. No one's seen this yet. Sum it up. It's by far the most easily digestible. So it's
Right.
overview of land use and municipal law that I've ever personally read. So I respectfully request everyone read through the document cover to cover at some point over the next couple of months. And then we'll add it to the agenda for one of these upcoming meetings for some discussion or questions and answers. And
I wish we had had it before we started.
yeah, Pat, I agree. I think it's one of the best overviews of local land use, like I
It
said.
is
some of
good,
the-
it really is.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenally simplistic and well-written document that cuts right to the most important issues without really getting unnecessarily detailed. So that was pretty much what I wanted to present.
And I think we should also, Mitch, do you want to do your 15 minutes on the comprehensive plan, or do you want to wait till next time?
I'd like to finish the discussion on what Alex was just talking about. If we're gonna go through this and understand it and get something out of it, one way to do that is to pick a section and read it before the next meeting, and then discuss that section for 15 minutes at the next meeting and see what we get out of it. Or pick two sections.
Well, I think it's simple enough that you're gonna read it and get it. I mean, I don't think it needs a lot of discussion personally.
Or you could say, how about, how long is this? not
It's
that
48, so it basically, the bulk of it is basically 40 pages. And then there's other information like nice to know, right to know, other things you should know, quick references, but the core is 40 pages, which I feel is
You can,
personally, I could
do it
I feel
about an
comfortable
hour.
saying that I could read
Hour
40
and a half.
pages before the next meeting to discuss, sections 1 through 5. So maybe.
Read the whole thing, that's your homework, really get stuff done, and then questions at the next meeting.
That's fine.
So we'll
Okay.
have to drop to the side.
now, I still though wanna know if you want to do your 15 minutes.
Whatever you want.
On the
I mean, I can do it
comprehensive
now. I can do it, with some other.
What, let's hear what the committee wants.
Well, Pat, there was one other agenda.
Make a motion to table the proposed tour of the waste management facility in Penn.
That was the next agenda item.
Second.
Okay.
Tabling, yes?
Yeah, okay, all in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Okay, then, the Pocono Airport.
Yeah, that one's time sensitive. So Pat, I know you had mentioned that I think you mentioned you were gonna attend the planning commission meeting. There was some discussion. If in your packet, you have the materials for that. So that hearing's happening next week, right? 26th.
Yes.
So
you want to inform the supervisor, you need to do so now.
I wanted to point one thing out to the Environmental Advisory Council. I did a little homework. If you look in your packet there with the paperclip on it. So, zoning changes are, depending on what they are, they can be relevant to the Environmental Advisory Council. In this case, the supervisor is considering a request to change a 4-acre parcel from R1, which is low density residential, to industrial. And if you look at the second page, I've highlighted in the zoning ordinance what percentage imperviousness that property would be allowed to have if it were to be changed. It would change from 30% imperviousness to a maximum of 70%. If this change were to be voted on next week by the supervisors. And I also printed out a schedule of uses of things, uses that could go in the industrial property. And you're talking from, truck terminals, warehouses, solar energy, paper mills, quarries, logistics, fulfillment centers, there's a lot of pretty high intensity uses that would go in there. And I just wanted to provide this info to kind of give you a comparison of what currently is allowed in that 4-acre parcel and what would be allowed at the supervisor.
And Alex, correct, what I understood is that the rest of it is already zoned industrial, right?
Everything that's in red is industrial. And this is all residential, and it's this extra bit that's being.
Yeah.
To add on to what's already there. It's not spot zoning or anything like that. It's just adding on to the current M1. I believe there was something, Alex, you might not have mentioned, that there's a fair bit of that that is already undevelopable though.
Right.
I was about to say, I thought, there's some, swamp around there, wetland.
Yeah, I think there's wetland delineated. It's pretty significant. So even if it changes zones, yes, you have more things you can do there, but the restrictions around wetlands are still the same. But I don't know the exact, I haven't read it all yet.
Well, I asked about the creek, I thought it was Sambo, but they told me it was an unnamed
Well,
creek.
To me,
technically, it's this little Sambo Creek watershed, and it's one of the so the little Sambo Creek is the creek that comes out of Lake Valhalla. But I don't believe it, I still think it's technically an unnamed tributary, but it's known as Little Sambo. That's the whole, so this is one of the main tributaries of the Little Sambo Creek. So there's a confluence of multiple tributaries that occurs prior to Lake Valhalla. And this one is one of them. And if you go back there, it flows pretty well. I don't know if it's flowing right now, it's pretty dry. But it's still a tributary, and there's floodplains. If you look at that blue, that's a floodplain. And so it's about half the property looks like it's in a floodplain or wetland. So I just wanted to point out that the 70% imperviousness looks like it may not even be. I just have to question, if you're gonna take a parcel and change it from 30% impervious to 70%, shouldn't that parcel be actually capable of handling 70%? Because it looks like 50% of the parcel.
that's not why they're doing it, because where they currently have land, they are dealing with setbacks into that R1 area. I think that's why they're doing it. It's gonna be part of the question. And by the way, you can answer, I don't have any information. I'm not planning on doing anything. They could answer that, and they could do anything they want if it's done that way. But my understanding, I think that's what they were gonna do, is come in a little bit into it, but I don't know exactly. That's just,
That gets at my question.
Sure.
Why is it being requested?
that's why they're requesting, but the reality is, it doesn't. You can ask that question, but if you change it, you can't be like, well, you told me it was for something else, then do something else. So it's sort of irrelevant. It's unfortunate, but that's the answer to that question. It's irrelevant. I mean, I've said this so many times recently, like,
Yeah.
my opinion on this is sort of irrelevant because the judge says this. I mean, it's like,
I'd like to speak to irrelevancy, please.
yeah.
I was at the meeting when
Presentation.
at the presentation last week, when the zoning commission.
No, it was the planning commission and the
No,
guy,
it's the zoning.
was he the zoning guy?
I was planning today.
With one commission,
Sorry,
sorry.
doesn't mean.
And
there's no zone.
the way that meeting was run, it sounds like they're done. They're gonna change it.
Well, planning commission doesn't change it.
Okay,
They're the same,
okay,
they're not a little bit more power than this group, but they make a recommendation to the
okay, all
supervisor.
right.
And the
Sounds like,
supervisors, I specifically visited, I had asked you guys to make the recommendation as well,
okay.
or someone did, maybe it's.
Well, that meeting, they took comments at the end, they weren't willing to take any questions.
Can I interject, Brett? I think you're referencing a zoning hearing board meeting you attended, and there's two separate ones I think you attended. You sent a So there's a zoning hearing board, and then I think what we're talking about here, we're talking about two different things. This is the planning commission that you
Yeah.
attended last, I don't know if you were there.
It was a zoning,
Yes, he was. You were
So there
there.
was, yeah, I think the zoning was the week before.
okay. Right. I'm sorry.
All of those will be clarified in this document.
Okay.
Um,
I go to all the meetings, how about that?
There you go.
So what is the committee's pleasure on what we say about, or what we do about this proposed zoning change?
The planning commission recommended approval.
I didn't attend, so.
Yeah,
Will you, allow discussion from,
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
because, to me, if the fact that it's partly wetlands means it's environmentally sensitive and that it would be a negative thing for the environment to change the zoning because, you don't know what they're going to do
right.
in the future.
And they wouldn't
can't
say
do
what
this-
they were
They
gonna
still
do.
can't do the same things, is what I'm trying to say. If it's wetlands, it doesn't matter, they
Right.
can't do, if it's a residential or if it's industrial, the wetlands rules are the same.
Yeah,
So they're gonna have the same 40-foot buffer, they're gonna, that's why when I first saw it, and I saw it, I was like, why are they bothering to do this? And the only reason sort of makes sense is if they're trying to do something very small, 1/4, and they're worried about the setbacks on the property. But I wasn't.
What does that mean, the setback?
So you can't do certain things from your edge of your property, so
Oh,
it
I
might
got
mean they wanna just build up right up to the very line of the red. And by changing the zoning of the other things, they
I got
can do that. I think they might own it already too, but I don't know that.
They might,
They
I
do.
don't know.
They do own it already,
yeah.
Okay,
I
so,
don't know, so it's hard to,
so Michael, you think that we should weigh into this?
I think you should. Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling, I know how as environmental. Doesn't say protection on it.
It's this little piece right here that they're talking
Yeah, it's
about.
pretty big, it's like,
It's 4 acres.
it's 4
4.28.
4 acres.
Okay, what is?
I just
it?
wanna make sure you guys are aware that even if it gets changed. There's still setbacks and buffers and stuff that they can't do anything with, but especially now with our slightly improved. Wetlands ordinance that went through already.
And I'm not saying that
Planning
they're gonna
commission
do it.
recommended for it.
I didn't attend,
You
so
said
I'm not
yes.
on the vote list.
Sorry?
The planning commission recommended
Yeah,
Yeah.
to change the zoning.
Yes.
and the proposal was not, they weren't telling what they were gonna do with it. And I wasn't.
Well, and the problem with that, like I just said, is. That's one where it'd be nice to know, but it doesn't matter, because if once it's changed, they can do anything that they want, that is related to what they can do already. Which also has setbacks and all those sorts of
Yeah.
things.
Right.
It's the same thing when someone subdivides their property. They don't necessarily have to tell you why they're doing
Right.
it. They do a lot of times.
So you have to assume that they're gonna do,
They can do whatever, or it's
They
the
want,
next person can
right.
do whatever they're allowed to do on it if it was M1. Because even if they say they're gonna do one thing, they don't have to stick to that. It's not a hearing, it's not a.
that's kind of a given when they come, when they come before.
Yeah.
At least in
Well,
my mind.
it is wetland, there's quite a bit of wetlands there, and there is that creek there, that unnamed creek they kept telling me, that
Yeah, it's this,
drains into
And,
Little Sambo,
and if I may, it limits this is on the approach. And if they put a warehouse there, whatever, I understand that the landowner of the airport is willing to reopen the airport.
Well, maybe, if that's
Maybe.
you're said.
Right, but if someone puts up any building on that
They
property,
can't, it's all wetlands, that's why Black Buffaloes went under there. It's all wetlands, Black Buffalo came before the planning commission with these plans, and the planning commission was like, you're never gonna be able to do that because it's wetlands, you're just not gonna be allowed to do it. Okay, well, we'll still buy it anyway.
so if this is, you're telling me that if they turn it to M1 and they build with it where they can. A 2-story warehouse. That won't impact the possible reopening of the airport? It's right on the threshold of the airport.
It's right on the end of the road.
Yeah, I don't,
So it is,
no, it's not, so I didn't know that's where you're getting with that, I don't know what that.
that's my
is.
point. It completely stops the potential to reopen the airport if they,
But if
They
it's a
give this
different
up.
owner that owns the other side, they're allowed to build whatever they're allowed to build there.
it's
Doesn't matter.
R1 right now.
No, on this part here. Oh, you mean because of his right across from it? I got you.
I'm not sure that's a factor to take into consideration with
I
with
think
this
it is because I'm.
request. It's basically, the petition is. I mean,
I understand.
whether or not a landowner opens up a use on a property because of a zoning change, it's, I don't know, it's sort of like, if you were to take that property, like another, like I don't know, I haven't heard that argument before, to be honest with you, when it comes to zoning changes. Typically, when you look at zoning changes, it's what percentage impervious were you allowed before, now, what type of things can you put on, what kind of uses can you now put on the property? So before,
One of your neighbors, that was the other thing that I think I heard was that there's actually no neighbor, because that's the river there, right? Is there neighbors?
it looks like there's one house behind them.
That's what I asked. There's one house.
Yeah, so there's a house behind them, and you know, that property owner might not want one of the industrial uses there. Basically, I mean. It's honestly, my concern is. Kind of like a legal question maybe for the solicitors, if that property can't actually reach 70% impervious, then. Can that landowner say, you know, let's say it gets rezoned and then they find out that they actually can't get 70% impervious? Can they say, well, then why did you rezone it if I can't get the 70%?
No, they can't say that. You're just saying that, fine, you can rezone. I mean, we've talked about rezoning a lot in this township. It just means what you can and can't do with future properties there, but they're still sticking to whatever your zoning laws say.
Right, it's the zoning law says that they can get 70%
Yeah, but
impervious.
the zoning laws also say you have to have a 40-foot setback from wetlands.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
supersede that.
There's a lot of I agree, there's a lot of factors to consider in these. requests.
Okay, what is
I
the,
agree.
That's the maximum.
what's the council's pleasure
Right.
in about this airport property? Somebody make a motion?
I propose that we suggest it remain an R1.
I'll second that.
Yeah, for the general,
Okay.
public, it seems as the advisory council, you'd say. We don't want an industrial parking lot leading up to Little Sambo Creek. Sure,
Okay,
but even if it can't go there, just like you're saying, if it can't go there. Well, great,
That doesn't make any difference.
doesn't make any difference.
Also, they're not taking into consideration the landowner across the road, the airport guy.
Yeah, I'm hoping the airport guy will be at the meeting.
Yeah.
Any zoning change has to be posted over many months and neighbors have to be informed. I mean, my thought on it is if none of the neighbors mind, and I believe we have the zoning ordinances in place to protect that water already, regardless of whether it's M1, that's my thing. I don't know why we wouldn't do it, but
okay,
When is the meeting?
I thought I explained.
next week.
Okay, a little more specific.
It's on, whenever we meet on Wednesdays, every
Oh,
Wednesday.
supervisors meeting?
Yeah.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I'm really allowed to abstain. But hold on, let me think.
Okay,
Hold on, let me think.
Squeeze harder.
Cause I don't know, I honestly, my personal view is I don't quite have enough information to really know. So, but I can't abstain, have to vote. It's a tough thing.
okay, all in favor that we go on record, that they rather not change it. I know the language, would have to be better, but
I mean, just on the general grounds that it's watershed.
yeah.
For sure.
From an
I think
environmental
that's a
point of
good
view.
basis.
Yeah,
I'm pro airport.
Well, I don't think that, I'm gonna put that in the letter, if that's.
One quick question, you mentioned 40-foot easement before, that's the existing,
Buffer
that's the
on
word.
wetlands, not just on.
Yeah, but we were recommending 100-foot, and where did that go?
So currently, so the margins area is 75 feet.
Right, okay,
The recommendation is, you recommended to do more research on it.
okay.
At this point, it's remained 75 feet with a 40%.
Sorry, I said 40 feet, 75 feet, 40%.
Correct.
Okay,
Undevelopable.
all right.
I
I'm
did
sorry,
the same thing.
sorry.
Um,
And that was passed already.
Okay, that's why I just wanted clarification with,
Right.
with that number.
That happened in the last 2 meetings ago.
It's actually next week is the hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was voted to send it to planning commission. Wait, for the wetlands?
Yeah, so the hearing.
I thought I
is-
signed,
is next week. It's been advertised and next week's the formal hearing. So there will be 2 hearings, as I understand, next week. You'll have the hearing for the zoning change and also for the wetland amendment.
okay, I remember, I guess I approved the advertising of.
Well, that's gonna be a good meeting.
Did our letter go to the supervisors?
Point of order is I recommend voting a motion, then I could answer that
Yeah,
question.
All in favor?
I,
I'm gonna say nay. And I'm not, by the way, that does not mean that I vote in favor of making it industrial.
Yeah.
Cause I honestly don't know. I need to hear from the other neighbors. I'm not gonna make
Well, I think that's.
I'm not gonna make an opinion on to save the airport if the owner of the airport doesn't care,
Fair enough.
if that's the main rationale.
Okay,
So the
Alex.
motion carries 5 yes, 1 no, no abstentions. And then Pat, now that the motion, so the township has provided a new letterhead. And that letter, I can send you that letterhead, and the township wants the format of these recommendations to be very consistent, so I can send you that. And then you are welcome to articulate this motion and then send it back to me, and then I'll send it to Julie and make sure it gets in the board packet for next week. So,
Wait a minute, I think we're talking about two
Did I-
different things.
So I'm talking about the last recommendation.
oh,
But I don't know.
do you want to make a written recommendation on this? What you just voted on? I guess I got confused there.
Yes.
Because I thought, because I'm definitely at fault in this one.
That was, the motion just now was to make a formal recommendation to the supervisors for next Wednesday's meeting. So it has to be-
Thanks. Okay, so Michael, how would you like that recommendation to be received?
I think anyone, a letter, I don't care what the letter has on, just put it in the letter.
Paper airplane.
Okay, so Pat,
A letter that's sitting on the table right here that just shows it's a formal recommendation of a day.
I'll get you what you need and then.
It's right, then
We're such a minority.
then the supervisors have a yay from planning and nay from environmental, so they're gonna, it's informative. Backs up either viewpoint.
Okay, the other thing is, did the letter on the wetlands get written? I mean, I wrote it. Did it go?
Yeah, so the township is got the formatting, so that's what I was trying to speak to, and I apologize for any mix up. So now there's a letterhead that says Environmental Advisory Council, so when this body makes recommendations. You will have the letterhead, and then you will write on that, and then that can be sent directly to the supervisors and Julia. I don't have to act as a middle person. So I will send that to you after the meeting. Julia wants to formalize it. So she's on vacation this week. She'll be back on Monday. But I mean, if Michael, I mean, can I,
If it's a recommendation for the wetlands, it better get in by the Wednesday, because that's when we're gonna make a vote.
so with your permission, I'll send that, what we worked on to, I don't.
But Michael,
I'm one person, I'm not a board of supervisors, I can't authorize anything.
Michael,
Sorry.
we said we were in favor of the change because it was better than what we had.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I think we had the EAC minutes, I think.
Yeah,
But we also committed to do some work and research.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to that tonight. I had that on the agenda.
Oh.
We,
By the way, I think the supervisors, so what I can do, and this will provide that opportunity. We discussed at the last meeting, adding an agenda item for the planning commission, if there was something they wanted to specifically voice. And I think we we're gonna do the EAC as well, right? Didn't we say that? I can just ask Jake to put it on the agenda.
okay.
That way, if ideally we have a letter, but if not, you could, on behalf of the EAC,
Gotcha.
voted to recommend this. But keep it, we're talking about this, talking about this, what is actionable, that's it.
Yes, sir. I
Otherwise, we're gonna take it off the agenda. You can do all you want.
Brett.
As long as you,
As long as you do what I say, right?
no, I just said this like, be concise, that's all.
Any color as long as it's black.
I'm perfectly okay with that instruction.
Okay, we have
Okay, do we have a motion to, any public comments?
We still have the comprehensive plan.
Oh,
Well, you want the.
Mitch, Mitch and I talked, we'll table it. It really needs our full attention.
Definitely.
And I think we're a little
So I would move that we defer that to the next meeting.
correct. Okay.
That already came up at a supervisor meeting though, the formal. Cause you guys made a motion to recommend that it be done,
Right.
But
the comprehensive plan,
no, the planning commission made a motion.
years
That it be
ago.
done. No, they made it last year and it was, and
Yeah, last year, but at the supervisors meeting, there was something about the EAC recommending this. I thought, maybe it was
I don't
reviewing
think
the
so.
minutes of
I don't
this.
think
it
so.
would be in our minutes and I didn't see it in the last minutes.
I was there and I don't remember.
Well, you just make a motion to recommend the supervisors, they update the comprehensive plan.
Michael made the motion.
I did not, I
Go
said, why
ahead,
don't you?
I'm not gonna make
That's
the
what
same
happened.
motion here I made in the planning
It's
commission.
true, someone else should make that. motion.
Somebody else would
If you,
make that
if you guys want that,
Okay,
I'll watch you talk about it later.
so the motion to table our presentation and our sort of pronouncement about the
Well,
comprehensive.
you know, one of the things is I sent out 3
I got- yeah.
documents. And I pointed out a couple pages in each one that really kind of zero in on the issues that I wanted to talk about. So if you have more time, you'll be able to see a little bit more of that. But that, I mean,
Do we have a second to that motion? Did someone second it?
Well, I'll second
Table it
it.
to- Okay, any discussion, more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I guess Mitch is also saying, review what he emailed.
Yeah, I read it. It's very good. Thank you. You have no
Thank
power,
you.
you
Thank
have
you.
no say. What we do has no.
But as this says, public participation is important and you do have influence.
We have influence.
You may not have
As I said
power,
before.
but you do. If you have influence, then you have power.
when recommendations sit on agendas for 2.5 years, have the supervisors never addressed it, you don't have influence.
And then,
No, I'm not saying all your recommendations are gonna be taken up.
Well, I'm talking about
There's a
planning,
difference.
I'm talking about planning commission experience.
No, I know, but just, okay, motion to adjourn.
Second?
second. And it's.
Everybody?
Thank you.
Thank
for-
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, I'm glad.
Thank you for
glad
your-
you